Plants versus animals protein. What is the difference and which is the best? Myth of food and nutrition. If you're following me for a while about debunking myths, that is great. If not, it's okay. Hit the subscribe and bell button so you will receive notification when we have new video upload every week. Comment and tell us what foods you are eating to get protein. Nowadays, many people, both men and women, choose white meat, protein from animals to lose weight, rather than protein from vegetables and plants. What will be the impact on our health if we select proteins for animals? So, when it comes to choosing your protein, what we want to do is that we want to choose the healthiest sources of protein. And in my opinion, one of the healthiest sources of protein are proteins from plant sources. Now, a lot of people, they are a bit hesitant about eating protein from plant sources. Some people prefer animal protein because they believe their body absorbs it better, or that is more beneficial for them. While others feel plant protein doesn't satisfy them in the same way. But the thing is that it is, especially if you look at the protein from food sources such as soil. Soil has a protein that is considered a complete protein, meaning that it contains all of the essential amino acids that you need to maintain your health. And essential amino acids is an amino acid that you can only get from your diet. It's an amino acid that your body isn't capable to synthesizing itself. So you have to get it from your diet. And soy contains all of the one that you do need. Now, soy is also just as well absorbed by your body as animal protein. There is a bunch of researchers got together and they look at the protein digestibility amino acid score. That's a bit complicated name. But basically, they look at the protein and how well it is digested and how well it is absorbed throughout the different sectors of your intestines. And they found that soy protein is just as well absorbed as animal protein is. So you don't worry about your body not being able to take the protein just as well. Now, animal proteins, they tend to contain things like they tend to be higher in fat. They will contain cholesterol as well. But again, when it comes to your diet, you still have to choose something that you have to be able to stick with. So while ideally, I feel the healthiest protein is a plant protein, but I also realize that it can be really difficult to ask people who are, a self-proclaimed carnivores to suddenly switch over to plant protein. So I feel like if they make a move, however small, towards a healthier choice, even if it's going to like fattier or unhealthier meat to a leaner white meat, it's still something to celebrate. They are taking a step to the right direction. And so I feel like it is something that really good for them. And I applaud for them to make the choice there because I know it is so hard to eat healthier and it is so hard to exercise more. So you know what? It is good that they are making that choice. So they are making that choice to be healthier and it is good. But when it comes to protein, I still feel that plant protein is one of the healthiest choices. So if they are out for that idea, they can also work on moving more of the diets toward those plant proteins and cutting out even more fat, cutting out even more cholesterol from their diet. What is the definition of Western diet? Myth of food and nutrition. Alright, so the Western diet is often defined as a sort of diet that it is very high in these fatty foods, very high in red meat, and very high in processed foods. For example, for a lot of us, you go out to the supermarket and a lot of us will buy these ready-made meals, or instead of getting wholesome bread or wholesome food, they will like all of these, like sausages or bacons or things like that, which is delicious, right? But not very healthy for us. So the Western diet is just like this trend of going towards all of these foods combined with a sort of lifestyle. That means sitting around a lot and just not getting a lot of exercise. Alright, so it is in contrast with other type of eating patterns. It's often called the Western diet because it's more common in Western countries like Americans or even UK. You think of typical American food, think of the stereotype of American foods, all of the unhealthy stuff, and that is pretty much what the Western diet is all about. So we want to avoid those type of foods. It is fine if you have it as a treat every so often. But I'm sure everyone will say if you have a Big Mac every day for every meal, that is not healthy for you. Would psyllium inhibit your absorption of nutrients? Myth of food and nutrition. There's a lot of news going around so far, or a lot of people thinking that, you know what? Psyllium helps reduce the absorption of cholesterol by binding to this thing like amylase acids. But does that mean that it binds to other stuff as well? Does it mean that it wouldn't be able to absorb nutrients as well? And then there's another news as well saying that, oh, psyllium or fiber is an anti-nutrient, meaning that it also prevents your body from absorbing all of these other nutrients. But it's actually a lot more complicated than you think, all right? You don't really have to worry about psyllium interfering with your abilities to absorb nutrients, okay? Now, if you look at our current diet, you know we are super blessed to live in wealthy countries like New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, maybe from USA, Canada, and etc. We are so blessed to be able to get all foods we want. All we need is to just walk into a supermarket and get the food. We don't have a food shortage. We don't, and we are not in the middle of famine. And for most of us here, our issues with our health is that we are getting too much foods. Alright, just look at the number one killer in the world is heart disease. And one of the major contributions cause the heart disease is things like high cholesterol, too much of saturated fat. We are overweight or obese, and all of these things will contribute to things like heart disease. And what do all these things have in common? It's all boiled down to the foods that we eat. Alright, so most of us, we don't have to worry about us not getting enough nutrients. In fact, we have to worry about getting the right nutrients. And fiber isn't going to hidden our goal in that. In fact, it will change our diets into a pattern that contains more fiber. We are actually doing ourselves a favor because fiber-rich foods tend to be nutrients-rich. All of these vegetables, all of these fruits, they are nutrients-rich and a veritable source of nutrients. Alright? So if you want to avoid this food because they have fiber, then you are sort of doing yourself a disadvantage here. You got to look everything as a whole. Alright, now, it's only the problem if you are starving, if you are malnourished, and you eat ridiculous amount of fiber, alright, then you maybe might have a problem there. But even then, if that is still your only choice of food, then it's still a fine source to eat. But for many of us here, fiber is not going to have any effect on our nutrients. It's not going to give us a nutrient deficiency. It's not going to interfere with our health in general. In fact, it's going to help our health because fiber-rich foods are rich in nutrients. So, if we make that sort of change in our diet, we are doing good by our body. We are not doing something to harm our body. Now, we know fiber is good for you. Like and share this good fiber to your friends and families. Follow me, Kim Loss, by subscribe and turn on the bell so you will get the latest update weekly. Stay active, eat healthy, and see you in next video.